Disney short films can be hard to get a hold of. Even in the age of streaming, only a handful have been made readily available. You have to do quite a bit of research and be willing to shell out a lot of cash if you want to find them all legally. But what about those shorts that you'll never get to see? Ones that are lost to time and gone forever. Lost media is a sad fact of life, but it gets even sadder when it's something you're interested in. And this week, we'll be talking about one specific piece of Disney lost media, Martha. What is it, how did it come to be, and why was it lost? Well, let's get right into it and find out together. Before we can talk about the film, we need to establish what was going on during this time period. Walt Disney had been working in Kansas City, Missouri for a few years by this point. He had wanted to become a newspaper cartoonist, but after getting a job at a local film studio, he found out that animation was more his thing. His first cartoon series was Laugh-O-Gram. Each retold a popular story like The Four Musicians of Bremen, Puss in Boots, Cinderella, and more. 7 are believed to have existed. The studio had managed to collect a small team of artists, including future animation legends like Ub Iwerks, Rudolph Ising, and Friz Freleng. After producing the fairy tale cartoons, the team was confident that this would be the start of something big. They'd make bank on the films and get to produce even more afterwards. All they were waiting for was a check from the pictorial clubs, who promised $11,000 after completing the cartoons, which was a lot of money back then. There was just one little problem. The Tennessee branch of the pictorial clubs went out of business, so all that money they were promised went right out with it.
In terms of money, we have no money.
The studio continued to keep trucking along, doing other projects. But quickly, work was starting to dry up. Employees began drifting away. Even Walt had started up taking other jobs, being a freelance newsreel editor and making short film commissions. One such commission came in 1922 from, of all places, a dentist. Thomas McCrum of the Denier Dental Institute wanted a short educational film about the importance of dental hygiene. And that's what he got with 1922's Tommy Tucker's Tooth. Tommy Tucker's Tooth is a short film with brief segments of animation, but the majority of it is live action, making it quite possibly the first live-action Disney film. It told the story of Tommy Tucker and his friend Jimmy Jones. They were classmates and friends, but were very different. While Tommy took care of his teeth, Jimmy didn't, because dental hygiene is for girls. No, I'm not just making a joke, that was his justification. Which leads to, you guessed it, a cavity. Luckily, it works out in the end, and everyone learns to brush their teeth. Why is it called Tommy Tucker's Tooth if Jimmy is the one who gets the cavity? I can't tell you. The film cost $500 to make. It wasn't anything particularly artsy or fancy, but it got the studio by until the next project. Luckily, the film survived the years, likely due to its wide circulation, and you can still watch it today. Fun fact, it was still shown to people by 1933, after Walt had become a household name. The fiancé of the actor who played Jimmy saw it in a nursing class. Laugh-O-Gram Studios persisted for the rest of the year, making short cartoons to experiment with animation styles. They were shown a few times locally and didn't go anywhere afterwards. All of these laughlets, as they were called, are considered lost, which is a shame because some of them actually seemed interesting. One of them was reportedly stop motion. In the spring of 1923, there came a modest success. They made a film set entirely to a piece of existing music. A music video, if you will. Not just a music video, but one that encouraged audience participation. Sing-alongs were nothing new, vaudeville acts had had them since the turn of the century, and they were still a fun novelty in motion pictures. The movies might have been silent, but that didn't mean the audience had to be. Theater organists played songs along with the movie, and the audience was encouraged to sing along. To think, nowadays we get PSAs in front of movies, encouraging people to be quiet and not disturb fellow moviegoers. It was the exact opposite back in the teens and 20s. Laugh-O-Gram Studios would launch another title called The Song-A-Reels. They partnered with the Jenkins Music Company, a music publisher in Kansas City, and the Isis Theater, which was right around the corner from the studio. Their first song-a-reel would be based on Martha, just a plain old-fashioned name, by Joe Sanders. For a little bit of background, Joe Sanders was a popular local artist in the Kansas City jazz scene. He's perhaps best known for being in the Nighthawks, a band he formed with Carlton Coon. They would gain national fame throughout the 20s, appearing in radio broadcasts all over the United States. After the group disbanded in 1932, Sanders continued to perform for the rest of his life. In addition, he composed a large number of songs himself, one of them being Martha. Martha, just a plain old-fashioned name, tells the story of the titular Martha, your average girl next door that the singer is in love with. She's just so quaint and pretty, and her life seems so perfect. You know the type. The song is just as upbeat and cheerful as you'd expect. Here's what it's supposed to sound like. Yeah, nothing more to say than that. If you're curious, the Internet Archive has the sheet music. From what we know about the short, it was mostly or entirely live action, shot on location in places around Kansas City. Walt directed it, and Ub appeared on screen as the song's lovesick narrator. He also designed the title card, one of the few surviving things from this film. There were clearly high hopes for it, that it would kick off a successful series and put them on the map. But it wasn't meant to be. Martha would be the only song reel ever produced. It had a brief run at the Isis Theater and quickly disappeared. Why did it not do well? I couldn't find a definitive answer. Unfortunately, it's just a fact of life. Not every creative project is going to do well. And with something like a quick little sing-along session, it's kind of disposable. You do it once, and then you never think about it again. That kind of explains why it hasn't survived either. Film preservation was just not something that was thought about back then. It's estimated that 80 to 90% of films from the silent era are lost. Even big hits that lots of people got to see. And if that can happen to the Cleopatras and the London After Midnights of the era, then it can happen to something as disposable as Martha. Disclaimer, I don't think anything is disposable. I'm just explaining how this came to be. There's probably a million other movies like Martha that were lost to time that we never hear about. Had it not been attached to Disney, no one would have even bothered looking into it. Again, I'm not justifying not preserving films or calling stuff like Martha worthless. I'm simply stating facts. Okay, so with all that in mind, what makes this film so particularly noteworthy? Well, it was through this brief engagement that Walt met the Isis Theater's organist, a man named Carl Stalling. He had achieved local fame for his performances at the theater, and was often given high billing for it. When Walt gained some success in California, he convinced Stalling to join him as a music collaborator. There he would compose many of the early Mickey Mouse and Silly Symphony cartoons. In fact, the idea for the Silly Symphony cartoons comes from him. So all of those classic cartoons he worked on, both with Disney and without, all of it was because of Martha. And what was one of Stalling's earliest musical contributions to Disney? A sing-along. Minnie's Yoo-Hoo was released in 1930 for a Mickey Mouse fan club. Mickey, accompanied by the Mickey Mouseville Jazz Band, performed the song, before a section encouraging the audience to sing along. Stalling wrote the music, and Walt wrote the lyrics. For a few years, this was the theme song to the Mickey Mouse cartoons, playing in all of the title cards. And it's been reused a few times since, in stuff like House of Mouse and the Paul Rudish cartoons.
I'm the host, they call Little Mickey Mouse, at a club that's known as the House of Mouse.
And of course, the Disney sing-along tradition continues to this day. Not just in those old tapes, but on television, Disney Plus, and, yes, YouTube. Those videos do crazy numbers, so there's still a demand for it. Not to mention that music is just a huge part of Disney in general. And to think, all of this is predicated by a short that doesn't even exist anymore. That's kind of incredible. Martha might have been plain and old-fashioned, but it leaves behind a huge legacy. It led to the meeting of two creatives, making all the rest possible. Without it, we might not have gotten all of those wonderful cartoons that came later. It's a shame we don't have the actual movie to show for it. Hopefully one day someone will find it, and this piece of lost media won't be lost forever. But until then, its small place in Disney history shouldn't be ignored. And that concludes the video. Now I'll pass the question off to you. What do you think of all this? Was any of this familiar to you? Are there any little pieces of Disney history that you'd like to see covered next? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down in the comments. But that's all the time I've got for today. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.